I just have always wanted to explore and go on adventures. As soon as I finished uni, I went overseas for 2 years backpacking just by myself, just jumped on a plane, one-way ticket, and off I went. And looking back, it was like, wow, did I know I was ready or did I feel ready? And I'm not sure. It was just wanted to do it, had to do it, didn't know where I was going to go and what it was going to be like. Just get that ticket and start. And same with these adventures. It's just, I have this yearning and I have this big picture idea, this visual, get myself in a position where I can get to day one and start it. Then off we go, discover what it's like, learn what it's like. Otherwise, you're just sitting there. Like I said, I don't like reading what other people are doing. I don't want to study what I'm about to do. If I've just got the right stuff to get me going, then the learning happens on the road.
Welcome to Seek Travel Ride, where we share the stories and experiences of people taking amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners. Hello listeners, I'm your host Bella Malloy and I'm absolutely thrilled to be welcoming back a guest whose story has stayed with me since his first appearance on the show. In fact, some of you listening now may not know this, but he was one of the very first people I interviewed when I launched the show. The guest today is Mark Gresser. Now, when I first spoke with Mark, it was to discuss his huge journey where he spent years cycling all the way from his driveway in Perth to Paris in France. Now, that was a 29,000 kilometre adventure across Australia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia and Europe. I could tell during that conversation that while Mark had been stationary back home in Perth for a number of years since ending that journey, he was scheming new adventures to come. He didn't come across to me as someone who sits still for too long. I was also pretty surprised to hear from him that he hadn't actually unpacked his bike from its box since he had returned home from that huge journey. So, was I right? And what is he up to now, I hear you say? Well, in true Mark Gresser fashion, his next chapter is just as bold as his first adventure was, but this time he's swapped two wheels out for 2 feet. That's right, Mark is currently on a human-powered adventure crossing Australia. He's going to be walking coast to coast, west to east, right through the heart of the country. He's pulling everything he needs in a custom-built cart and making his way across remote and rugged terrain, all the while raising awareness and support for youth mental health. Now, this adventure started a few months ago when Mark left the most westerly point of Australia, and he's heading right across the centre of Australia now with the plan of reaching the most easterly point as his finishing point. I cannot wait to hear all about this latest mission. What on earth inspired such a huge shift from bike adventuring to walking, how that first journey and the challenges of crossing Australia on foot have evolved to form each other, and once an adventurer, always an adventurer, right? Mark Gresser, a big warm welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Bella. It is so nice to catch up with you again.
It's so awesome to see you again virtually, Mark. I know it's been literally years since we first spoke, but you're out there adventuring again, and I'm speaking to you mid-adventure, admittedly slightly different to what I thought it might be.
And yeah, the interesting thing is that I started the bicycle adventure in 2015 and this one's 2025, so it's 10 years since I started my bicycle journey, and I actually looked up my diary entry from today, which was very interesting.
Oh my goodness me! Oh, I'm so going to that later in the journey, because I have a question I start my show with, Mark, and I ask it of all my guests, and I've already asked you, so I'm asking you a little slightly differently here, and that is, I want to know, do you remember the very first day of that big bike adventure?
I do remember the first day. In my mind, I've kind of got two first days of that adventure, because there was the day, which was the actual first day, I guess, where I started riding my laden bicycle for the first time, and that was east of Perth near a town called Southern Cross, and my mate dropped me off in a four-wheel drive, and from there I rode out to a town called Kalgoorlie, down to the southern coastline of Australia, and then back to Perth. So it was kind of like a test run, but it was a 2,345 kilometer test run over 7 weeks. So that was me basically testing all of my gear, making sure I'm happy with the idea of cycle touring, getting back to Perth. And then I sort of was in Perth for a month or 6 weeks, just finishing off life that I had in Perth. And then I left Perth to ride northwards. And then again, that felt like a first day, because from that moment, I was just looking for that horizon, and I knew I wasn't going to be returning. I didn't know when I was going to be returning from that point. So in a sense, that felt like another first day.
Oh my gosh. I do laugh at the idea that your first little test run was just a measly 2,000 odd kilometre loop. That's a huge adventure in itself. It sort of also speaks to the size of Australia and the size of Western Australia, that you can create a loop just around the southern part in Perth that's that long, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it included the famous Batyr Trail as well, which listeners might know of in southwestern Australia.
Yeah. Would it have been a lot more developed now since it was 10 years ago? Because I've heard of the Batyr. I've interviewed people who have toured on the Batyr, and it's meant to be amazing. It's got like purpose-built huts that you can stay at and stuff along the way. Was it like that when you rode it?
Yes, it was. I can't imagine it would be very different now compared with 10 years ago, because it was an established trail with the huts and everything.
Oh, wow. Mark, there's no way in your mind that 10 years ago, when you were setting off, as we said, for this big journey, Perth to Paris, that you could have thought 10 years later you're setting off again from WA, but this time on a mega journey on 2 feet, hauling over 100 kilos of gear at some time behind you.
Yeah.
Heading perpetually east, right?
That's right. I mean, the idea of doing this walk only came up in the last year. So, yep, it's been a brand new thing that wasn't part of my mindset for a long time.
A topic which I've brought up with people before has been that idea of what it's been like to arrive at the end of an adventure and to be in one spot, and a journey that you'd planned and planned for so long has come to a close. You've hit the goals and you're back in life, back in the routines of working and everything that goes along with that. And what it's like to not have that adventure fueling day to day. How did it feel for you? Because, you mentioned there it's 10 years since the big journey to setting off on this one. It's a nice sort of decade of a period, but there were many, many years where you were in one spot, not doing the adventurous thing. How was that, and how did that impact on you?
It's been a journey in itself, because I was distracted when I returned home from Paris. I was a little bit distracted because one of the main reasons why I came home was for my sister's wedding. So I had that as a reason to come home. I was also basically running out of money. I wouldn't have lasted too much longer on the cycling journey, having been on it for nearly 3 years at that point. So once I got back, I realized I hadn't really prepared myself mentally for returning home. I was just looking forward to seeing the family in such a fun wedding environment. And then the wedding happened, and then I was like, okay, well, now what? And my mind was still very much wanting more adventure and more cycle touring. So my aim at that point was to get a job that would just give me as much money as quickly as possible to get back on the bicycle. And it was actually a family friend at my sister's wedding that was like, oh, I work on a mine site, I can give you a job. So I started working on a mine site in kind of like a labouring role, and thought, sweet, that's gonna give me the income to keep travelling.
Mm.
And then the main next thing that happened was COVID. So,
oh gosh, and WA as well. Like, I mean, all of Australia was locked down from the rest of the world, but every state in Australia was nearly locked out from each other as well, weren't they? And WA was really restricted in that perspective.
Yeah, that's right. So, and then there went my ideas to get back on the bike and disappear into the world again. So then I had to shift my mindset to focusing on being happy, being in one place and settled, and actually investing in the relationships with people and friends that maybe I wasn't quite investing to that kind of level, because I knew I was just looking to go away again. So trying to be happy being in that one place when all I wanted to do was be elsewhere. And then, in the meantime, I got a job for the mining company in the environmental space. And then that kind of fell through the opportunity because I had a mental ill health episode, which I guess we can talk about more as I talk about the purpose of the walk. And then I also bought an apartment, and that was partly fueled by thinking that, oh, maybe I could have everything. The money in the mining industry was obviously really good. So I was like, oh, maybe I can actually buy a place, pay it off in a few years because the money's so good, then go traveling. I'll have that passive income, just getting greedy and wanting it all. And then following that, I stopped working for the mining company. So my income dropped. I returned to my old professional background in zoology, and then
Cool background, by the way. Little, just a little side comment there.
oh yeah,
I think you're the only zoologist I know.
and then had my head down working because again I was just stuck in Perth because it was COVID, and then I also had this journey into understanding and managing my own mental ill health for a period of time, which kind of kept me in Perth because, again, once COVID ended, I guess I could have chosen to leave Perth and go adventuring again, but there was a part of me that knew that that would be running away from some of the issues that presented themselves to me in the mental health space. So I kind of did want to be in Perth so I could continue to learn about my experience and understand mental health and not shovel it away and ignore it and just go adventuring. I wanted to kind of not put a close on that journey, but I wanted to work through it so I'm at a much more rounded point when I was to leave Perth again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about mental health and mental ill health, like you said as well. Like, we chatted a little bit before we pressed record, listeners, and something I was talking about was the vulnerabilities of speaking out loud about our own mental ill health sometimes publicly, but also there is a wrong lens on the adventure space where I would nearly say it's like the Instagram v reality space. There's this perspective that when people are adventuring, it's all amazing, blue skies, sunshine, unicorns and rainbows, when realistically there's a lot of time where it's not feeling like that. So I feel it's a big decision to know that you need to understand yourself and how you are mentally and your coping strategies and other things before thrusting yourself off into that adventure space as well.
Yeah, I think it would put me in a good position to really make the most of and enjoy that adventure world without this kind of thing in the background lurking that I haven't dealt with, because I might have then been afraid to return home to actually face that, or I might have never wanted to kind of face it in the future. So it felt important for me to work through what I was going through before taking off again. And then I had this apartment to pay off, or that I wanted to pay off. So there was one point where I was going to just abandon that whole plan because...
Oh, wow.
Because, adventure and travel is such an important part of me. It's where I get my drive to work from. And there was a part of me that I was at a point where I was ready just to take off and basically use all the money that I'd thrown onto the home loan, all the extra money, and just basically dig myself back into a financial hole again, because it meant that I would be satisfying my desires and goals and dreams to be adventuring. In the end, I decided, I was like, no, I'll keep my head down, only like 18 months or 2 more years. And I just kept my head down working. And that meant that I have paid off my 1-bedroom apartment. And it means I have that now, that small amount of passive income from renting it out. And I've got that home base, that property ownership, which does take a bit of weight off the shoulders, when you look long-term into the future. It was really at that point, and basically leading up then, when I knew I was like 6 months out from paying it off, and that was when my ideas for adventure really, came to the fore again. I was like, okay, this is it. I'm reaching that point now where I can take off again. What am I going to do? And I guess this lends itself to explaining why I chose to do this walk, because initially I was just like, I'll just get back on the bike. I rode from Perth to Paris, so westwards across Asia and Europe, and then I want to continue drawing that line around the world essentially. So the idea was to return to where I left off in Paris and continue just ride south through Africa, top to bottom.
You were going to visit me in the Pyrenees last time we spoke about this.
That's right.
You can walk across there in case the walking thing really takes off. There is a big walk that goes along. In fact, there's a walk called the Hexatrek, Mark, I just learnt about. And it's a through hike through all of France's mountains.
Yeah. So yeah, I had those ideas, and then what happened was I was like, actually, first, what I might do, I'll just go for a bit of a hike somewhere, just as a bit of a kind of like an intermission. I thought, oh, look, I've just had a really big 7 years, been working hard. I've put so much work and energy into, exploring my own mental health, and I'm in a really good place there. And I thought, oh, maybe it'd be really nice just to have a nice, quiet, isolated walk somewhere where I can just kind of step into the adventure world again space. I can just kind of assess where I'm at, catch up in my own mind with where I'm at, and just a bit of meditation about where I'm at before thrusting myself into what is, demanding physically, mentally lifestyle, the cycle touring, especially, entering Africa. So I did start thinking, okay, where should I do a hike? And I started looking up known hikes, and then I was just thinking, oh, there's just so much information about all these hikes. I kind of just want to do, something out of the box, like just something different. And then what happens in the same way that my cycle touring was just informed by this simple idea of an image of the world and a bicycle moving across it, there was this trigger moment where I just saw Australia and saw a figure walking from coast to coast. And then I was like, oh, shit, like, great, now I've got this idea. I'm not going to be able to put that to rest. So it blew out into this walking across Australia idea.
Wow, which is huge. It tells me two things, actually. The first one is, I remember I went through a series on the podcast where I would ask guests, what does the word adventure mean to them? And for me personally, Mark, there's something very rooted in the unknown. An adventure means the outcome is unknown. Because if you know what the outcome's going to be, it's not an adventure, it's a known thing. And I wonder whether that's something for you when you were saying about the hikes being the ones you would read about. There was too much information. In a way, too much. There's not enough unknown. There's not enough mystique. You can't be super curious because you maybe know the answer to the hike, or you know what I'm getting at there. And then there's the other one, which is the visual side. In our first episode a few years ago, you did tell me, and I remember this distinctly, like you didn't have a route. You just saw the bicycle moving around the planet. And that was how you were going to go around. And here's the visual side of you walking across the continent of Australia. And the reason I bring up the visual side is there's obviously a visual element to your persona as well. You're an amazing artist. Like you, on your first bike ride, you sketch as part of your journal as well. And so I wonder that visual thing must be a really stark thing for you as well.
I think it must be. It's hard to know because you're not in other people's heads, but yeah, I am very much driven by those visuals.
Did you bring a sketching kit with you on the walk? Like, are you sketching?
I haven't, no. Partly just because of gear, weight restraints. And again, I mean, when I took it on the bike trip, I ended up sending the stuff home because I wasn't necessarily using it as much as I'd liked. So no, I haven't got it on this journey with me now.
I think we need to go to context on the journey you're with now, and we will, but I actually just want to, before we go there, I do want to go to the bike side of it because it's so different. Did you have a practice walk? Like, you know how on the bike trip, before you did Perth to Paris, you did the short 2,000 odd kilometre loop.
Yeah.
Did you have a practice hike? And what would a practice hike that even be?
I didn't have a practice hike, and I think it touches on that element of the unknown as being such a driving factor, because for the bicycle journey at the start of that, what we're calling the kind of test run, I'd already quit my job. I'd already kind of fully invested into the long-term adventure for this walk. Yeah, I didn't. And with the bicycle journey, I don't necessarily like reading about other people's journeys because, I want it to be this big unknown. So for me, it was all about getting ready to start, basically getting to day one, making sure I've got the right gear, the food prep, the gear prep, the cart that I'm going to be pulling across Australia. And I think I've sort of come to realize as well that in a way, I choose not to really delve into what it might be like, but I've got this blind spot when it comes to really imagining what these kind of journeys are day to day. I'd rather just, again, I'm driven by this visual, this big idea, and that's all. I get myself ready to start. And then from day one, it's just, wow, this is what it's actually like.
Wow.
To answer your question, I did not do any practice hikes. I think only once in my life before I'd done a multi-day hike, and I think that was only 2 nights.
How much did your pack even weigh for that? Like, it'd be so different. And it's such a different hike anyway, because you, oh my gosh, like the trailer that you're lugging along as well. Like, it's so different to, like, you know, hiking with a backpack.
Absolutely. And yeah, just the sheer volume of gear and the prep involved, because I prepared all of the food for the entire journey already, and being able to carry enough water for stretches. So the most water I've carried, for example, is 100 litres.
Wow. 100 litres, that's 100 kilos. I remember when I interviewed Mark, and I think you're still up there as one of the guests I've interviewed who probably holds the record for the most gear that they took on your bike. Like, I remember we talked about how at its heaviest it could have been around 70 odd kilos or something potentially.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, like I'm just even, my mind's trying to compute the engineering of this cart that you're pulling alongside you when you're walking, because there's one thing to put that on a bike and there's gearing that you can use to help facilitate making that a little bit smoother and easier for you, but like when it's just up to you and the walking part, that's totally different as well. You talked there about preparing food and stuff for the walk. That is something that you did have some prior experience with as well, wasn't it? Because if I recall correctly, I think I've seen a YouTube series of yours where you prepared all the dehydrated meals that you were going to use when you were on, was it for the Gibb River Road?
Yeah, correct.
And I remember actually, I think you got to the end of the Gibb River Road and you were well and truly over the food that you had made, right? The variety was not the spice of life whatsoever, right?
No, that's right. And I had that in mind as I started preparing food for the walk. I knew that, all right, this time I'm going to have to make sure that there is great variety, because I did get, on the Gibb River Road, I got sick enough of the food that I had, because it was exactly the same every day, that I felt more comfortable by the end being hungry than trying to force feed myself that same food.
Wow, that really tells you something.
Then what happened though was, preparing obviously 9 months of food is an incredibly big job. I was just trolley loads day after day, shopping at the supermarkets, and then preparing all of the food and being limited by being gluten-free. And I was a vegetarian for quite a number of years coming into this. And so I started off limiting myself by remaining vegetarian, but I abandoned that idea when I realized how limiting that was going to be. Dehydrated dinners. So because it was such a huge job and it was actually hard to buy a great variety of food, I actually probably don't have the variety that I wanted, that I wished for coming out of my experience on the Gibb River Road. But luckily, it's been fine so far. I'm happy enough. I don't love it, but I'm happy enough with the food that I've got, and it's getting me through the walk.
Mark, I can't do an episode of the podcast that doesn't discuss food, because I'm very much one of those people. I always think there's a couple of different people in the world. There's people in the world who eat food purely to sustain themselves, and that's what food is for. And there's people who live and breathe for food, and food is the spice of life, and variety and flavour, and everything is done around food. And I am definitely that person. I want to know, what would a typical meal that you've made yourself be? Because when I've interviewed people, for example, who've cycled across Australia who haven't got dehydrated meals, there's the tinned tuna, it goes right up there, pasta, couscous, 2-minute noodles maybe. Like, what have you got for you? What are you looking forward to?
In a day, I've got breakfast of cereal, gluten-free cereal with milk powder, and I avoided lactose-heavy milk powders, so I've got a protein powder and a soy milk powder that I mix together. And then for dinners, I've got commercial dehydrated dinners that you might commonly see on hiking trips that people carry. So initially I was cooking and making my own dehydrated meals, and I completed 88 of those, which took a lot of work and a long time.
Gosh, yeah.
And then I realized that I was basically going to have to cook and dehydrate full time for a month to do all of the meals for the entire journey. And I thought, I might actually have a look at what I can get commercially. So I did end up buying those backpacker style meals, which was a good option in the end, because the 88 that I prepared myself went rancid.
Oh, I did read about this and my heart sank.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. it was the oil, wasn't it? It was like
Yeah.
olive oil or something. Like, what was the oil that went rancid and how much did it ruin the food? Like, was it just not edible?
It tasted horrible. I ate a few because, it tasted horrible, but I could still get it down.
Did you have to put tomato sauce on it?
Oh, I didn't have, yeah, I would have buried it in tomato sauce, yeah. If I had it with me.
It's an Aussie thing, listeners, from those that are not around the globe. It's an Aussie known thing that if something's not good, just throw a lot of tomato sauce on it and it makes it all better. Listeners, I recently had the pleasure of taking my own little mini bikepacking adventure, and on that trip I used the Zerali Summit Seeker tent. Zerali are an Australian brand making awesome outdoor gear, and their prime motivation is to get more and more of us out there in the outdoors. So their gear is great value without a super high price tag. Their Summit Seeker tent, it's a 2-person tent and weighs just 1.6 kilos. What I absolutely loved about using it on this weekend was how quick and easy it was to pitch, the fact I could sit upright in it and not have my head hit the ceiling. It fit both me and my husband in it perfectly fine, and it has double doors, which meant neither of us had to awkwardly climb over each other if we needed a middle-of-the-night bathroom break. Check it out for yourselves, the Summit Seeker 2-person tent from Zerali. Clicking the affiliate link in the show notes also helps support this podcast. Back to the episode.
But then I started reading about it, and, it's not the healthiest thing to eat rancid oil. Yeah, so I switched to these commercial meals. And then for lunch, it's baked beans, a rice tuna bowl, peanut butter and biscuits. I've got a mix of like muesli bar and roll-ups, and then nuts. And I dehydrated a whole bunch of fruit. So I've kind of got these dried fruit logs as well.
Something that occurs to me when someone's taking on a journey like you are and along remote stretches like you are is when you've got to haul along all your food for a really long resupply and all your water as well, it occurs to me just you've got to be super disciplined with it too then. This is just how much I love food. Have you factored in like extra snacks? Are you allowed to have you got like a buffer? If I'm really hungry and I've got the munchies, for example, I can dig into this? Or is that like, no, Bella, you do not have that luxury on it if you're taking on a journey like this?
I do have a buffer, but it's not necessarily filled with delicious snacks and treats. I've got a few lolly bags and some chocolate.
How does chocolate go in the outback? Like, does it just turn into like liquid?
Absolutely. So at the moment, I'm just eating the chocolate when I'm having a rest day in cooler environments because
it's just melted mess, right?
And the same with peanut butter and the nut butters that I've got. I've realized that, they just melt into liquid, and it's actually really hard in 40-degree heat to eat nut butters and swallow it and get it down, like just having to wash it down with a lot of water.
Oh my gosh, it reminds me. Oh gosh, listeners, we're going on a bit of an Aussie theme here, but I don't know about you, Mark. I'm a little bit older than you. Not much, but I am. And I remember at school there used to be this challenge of trying to eat 2 completely dried Wheat Bix one after the other,
Yeah.
and no one could ever do it. And it's like
that's
it just makes me think of that in a way.
Yeah, it's a good analogy because that's what it's a bit like. Just this, sticky glue in your mouth, and you just got to wash it down. So, yeah, nut butter is not the most practical thing in really, really hot weather, and it actually, it becomes really hard to eat in really, really hot weather as well. So I'm actually trying to eat as much as I can in the cooler parts of the day, knowing that because it's dry food that sucks moisture out of you and you need to add a lot of water to it to just get it down and digest. Yeah, it's hard to consume it.
I remember reading somewhere that you were saying something that you're the most thankful of if people, like a grey nomad pulling a caravan or something, stops. Obviously, you're not going to knock back water or liquids of any type, but fruit was something that would just be like hitting the jackpot.
Oh, absolute gold. Yeah, piece of fruit, juicy fruit like an orange. I think that story was on the Gibb River Road actually when I was handed a fresh mango, and these things just become the most amazing thing you've ever eaten in your entire life in those moments. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could just imagine. It takes me actually, there was a recent podcast guest, Laura Bastioli. After I'd interviewed her, she was in Alice Springs, and after I interviewed her, she sort of made her way up to Darwin and then went across to Broome. And it was when she was nearing the Northern Territory WA border, everyone in a caravan that was passing her was stopping and unloading all their fruit. because they can't take it over the border. And she was talking about, this is like the jackpot because I've got all this fresh fruit. I've never had so much food in my life. I wonder if you've got a border crossing somewhere ahead of you where you're going to experience that for yourself.
I had a similar thing.
Oh, awesome.
But there wasn't too many people travelling along it, but crossing into Northern Territory, you're not meant to take fruit across the WA Northern Territory border. So yeah, a few people were like, "Oh, we've got to get rid of this fruit. Here, have all of this," which was obviously very nice for me.
You know what? We have to wind back and actually properly call out exactly what you're doing. You talked about not wanting to do the hikes that everyone's done, that you can Google the answer to and find every bit of information about and see everyone's Instagram photos on every point of the hiking trail. You've schemed up a hike that's taking you from the most westerly point to the most easterly point. Is it Steep Point to Cape Byron?
That's right. Yep.
How many kilometres is that? I think I've got 5,300 odd.
Yeah, when I mapped it out, that's roughly what it was, around 5,300. And in reality, I think the distance that I'm actually going to be walking between those points is probably going to be closer to 6,000.
What's creating the extra distance there?
Just because that 5,300 was, just a desktop review. Almost say if you did Google Maps, one point to another map, whereas, the distance that I'm actually walking is like, I hit stop when I found my campsite. So I was like looking for campsites. It's backtracking to do a bit of filming. It's walking off into the bush to go to the toilet. Like, it's all those things that are obviously accumulate across a long journey.
There's so many questions in my head that all frame around logistics for something like this. I think something I want to talk about, though, before that is the mental health side of it all, because this is a big driver for you as well, and you've got an awesome fundraiser that you're championing with this as well, and you're doing freaking awesome on it as well, by the way. I think a big element for me is through your social media posts about this. You're sharing your own mental health journey, or your mental ill health journey at times as well. And it's something that I don't think we see a lot of in this style. I think there's awareness to a degree, more now than there was, say, 10 years ago, but I still feel like it's a bit of a taboo, or it's an area that people feel they know and understand, but really it's a very superficial understanding. And I want to know what has driven someone like yourself with that personal lived-in experience to want to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to open up, to talk about and to champion this type of stuff as well?
It's an interesting question, because I don't think I had like a moment where I just made a plan to share what I'm sharing on social media about my own experiences. At the start, I knew I was wanting to do this kind of walk, and then I thought, it actually is a great opportunity to raise money for a cause, and my mind automatically went to a mental health cause and youth mental health cause in particular, just because I talked about, that period of time understanding my own mental ill health, and a lot of what I learned, I wish I knew a lot earlier. I wish there was more education about simple basics of psychology and what happens when you get stressed, and the biology of what happens in your brain when you get stressed and anxious and that sort of thing. It's so easy to access education about first aid for physical injuries. You go and do a course. It's harder to access a similar level of education and training about what to do when you're having negative thoughts, when you're feeling depressed or anxious, to manage those types of things. So I was attracted to the charity that I'm raising money for, Batyr, because they focus themselves on Australia's youth and removing the stigma around talking about mental ill health issues. Because the more we talk about it, the more we understand it. The more we understand it, the better we can target, deliver services, develop services to manage and prevent mental ill health issues, because it is such a problem these days. If you look at the statistics, youth mental ill health in particular is globally on the rise. The rates of suicide among our young people is scary. The rates of effective disability because of mental ill health issues is scary. And so I wanted to do something to contribute. And I think if you look at one of my first posts about mental health, where I was explaining why I was raising money as part of this walk, I think I say that I might share about my own journey, my own mental ill health journey in that video. So at that point, I didn't have it in my mind that I was going to share so much, or I didn't know what I would share. It was just this idea that, maybe I should, I can talk about my own experiences that informed, just as a bit of background that informed this whole journey. And then I took the leap into, making videos and posting videos about my experiences, and I will continue to do so because there's more that, I want to share that explains what I'm doing out here. And yeah, it was interesting because I'm comfortable with it now because I've posted a number of these videos, but at the start it was this scary idea. I had fewer followers, so maybe, it'd be harder if you're just posting it to a lot of people up front.
I reckon, I don't know. I actually think maybe the other way around. I think fewer followers potentially also means more engaged followers, more people that maybe know you, and more people that are more really invested in your story. And a lot could be people who see you every now and then. Personally, I think it's freaking fantastic what you've done, and I've seen it grow in terms of how you're continuing to share that, and to share it in a way that actually makes it something that's real, that's not a textbook. This happened for me, and to ground it in your own experiences and what you've benefited from as well.
Yeah, that's something that I'm learning as I go with it, and it becomes easy if I just talk through my own experience. That's all I need to do, and that's the easiest thing in the world. I don't need to pretend I know everything about everything. I just talk through my own experience and share my own experiences, and that's really what people, are responding to. And particularly, I think, because it's, I'm telling a story as well. There's the people get invested in the storytelling of the walk, but then also, I guess, as I'm presenting the mental health side of things, that's almost a story in itself.
And you're having opportunities to tell the story in smaller communities that you're passing through, perhaps, too?
Yes, a couple of schools so far. I've chatted to the students in the town of Kew and Laverton, which was great to, be face-to-face with youth and present the idea of the walk and what I'm doing in the youth mental health space, which has, been really nice.
I was sort of thinking, how at the very start you said that you were nearly going to go and launch yourself onto like another bike adventure, but you were on this own journey, your own mental health journey, and learning to deal with stuff. There's a certain amount of self-awareness to have the foresight to know that this is something you need to pause on and learn about more before you thrust yourself into that space. Was it because on your bike journey, did you deal with mental ill health events on the bike journey that made you think, if I'm going somewhere unknown like Africa, for example, that's not going to be a good place for me to be in if I don't know how to deal with it here?
No, it wasn't during the bike journey. It was, I think I'd mentioned it earlier in this interview where I went for a job. Essentially, I was in this mining space. So
yep.
I'd finished my bike journey. I was back just wanting to earn money. I'd got that labouring kind of job for the mining company, and then I had kind of stumbled into an opportunity to work a professional role in the environmental space in the company, work as an environmental officer on a mine site, because I just bumped into the superintendent who was managing that job opportunity in the city, and he was like, just come for an interview, don't think too much of it. So I did, and then I got the job without thinking too much of it, then started this job, and this basically was the trigger point for me in terms of diving into my own mental ill health, because I flew up to the mine site to start this job where you're up there for an initial period of 5 days, 12 hours a day. And I basically broke down from the stress of that week. That week, it was a guy introducing me to the role. There's no team, so you're just the single environmental officer managing everything to do with environment on the mine site. And the guy that I was replacing, he'd already got his next job. So he was like, look, I'm not going to be around to really show you much. I'm here for a day or two. I'll just give you a quick intro. This is the computer systems you need to learn. Like, I don't have time to show you. Here's all the meetings you're going to have to go to. Here's all the people you're going to have to be dealing with. They're going to be coming to you with this, this, and this. These are the guys that don't do anything really properly on the mine site environmentally wise, so you really got to be on top of them. The government's coming out next month for an audit for the mine site, so you need to get across everything because obviously they could shut down everything and he said, by the way, there are these major serious problems to do with the management of water and stuff on this mine site. So it's, it's not an easy one. And all of this accumulated and sent me spiraling into basically a period of hypomania. So after day 2, I stopped sleeping, and then I was calling the superintendent saying, look, I think we've made a mistake. I think you need someone more experienced and that sort of thing. And then for anyone that knows what happens, I was just spiraled into this period of hypomania. My cortisol was through the roof. I was in utter chaos, shutting down. I couldn't read. I couldn't sit there and read anything. So like the last day, I was just pretending to read documents, files, and in reports. I literally could not read. I was barely just holding it together because, again, I'd stopped sleeping. I hadn't slept for 3 days at that point. Managed to just get on the plane, get home, and, my cortisol, again, was just controlling everything through the roof. So I didn't sleep when I was home. Meanwhile, my mind's like, there is absolutely no way you can go back up there. So I basically wrote out my resignation letter, had a meeting in Perth with the superintendent on the Monday, slid the letter across the table. And it was interesting because he said to me, he was like, look, you're in fight or flight at the moment. Now's not the time to be making decisions. But I was too far gone. I was like, no, I can't even think about anything. So basically resigned from the job. And then it wasn't until I visited my sister and she had some medication, some beta blockers that I took. I took these and they brought me down out of this hypomania enough for me to sleep, because I still wasn't sleeping, and then just a bit of a come down where I was like, coming back to reality a bit. And I was like, oh God, like I don't have a job now. I've ruined that opportunity. I have no idea what the hell's going on in my head. I've suddenly got these major mental health issues. Meanwhile, my confidence, like the whole thing just blew my confidence in absolutely anything to shreds. So rock bottom. I wouldn't have been able to go traveling even if I wanted to, because the whole idea of this bike trip that I did, I was like, that's a different person. And then I'd read, I was like, I didn't have a job. So I was like, had to, looking up job ads, and I'd have a panic attack every time I read the job description, because my confidence in myself, in my ability in the professional space was just absolutely shot to pieces. And then that was basically what I spent 5 or 6 years understanding. And initially it was climbing out of that. Then it was being functional enough that I can be like, okay, wow, like I've just gone through this. I'm okay now. I'm working, I've got a solid job and things are fine, but let's now look back and actually understand what happened. And, seeing a psychologist and actually, understanding it. And it's that I didn't want to run away from, that opportunity to dive into that. Whereas I could have just nicked off overseas and put that in a box somewhere and not wanted to look at it. But again, like I was saying, touched on before, I know that box was there. I'd be scared to probably open it up later. So I was like, look, let's just put some time into this and get to a point where I'm not running away from anything, making sure that when I do step forward into the adventure world again, it's with everything backing me, or it's just being in a space where it's an entirely positive decision.
Yeah. Is it a case now that your awareness of what was going on then, you've got the awareness to figure out if something's on the verge of happening again, or how do I phrase this? Okay, we're going to try and put it in my phrase here. I'm asthmatic, and I grew up knowing what my triggers for an asthma attack could be. I know that cigarette smoke's one of them. Ridiculously laughing too much can be one of them, which is horrible. And another one might be exercising on a cold winter's day and breathing in very, very cold air. So I know what those triggers are, which means that I can take measures to stop those triggers happening. But I also know what it's like to feel like having an asthma attack. And so if I do, I can take steps to preventing that from escalating into being something really, really bad. Do you find with that lens on that you're the same now with your mental health? You were talking about experiencing episodes of like hypomania there and panic attacks. Do you feel now, because you took the dedicated time to learn and understand yourself then, that you have sort of like a backpack of experience or some form of knowledge about it now to identify it, and that helps to then help it not spiral?
In ways, yes. So in terms of managing stressful feelings and thoughts and anxious feeling and thoughts, they're things that I would have had my entire life, but now when they're there now, I can identify it as such. I'm like, okay, this is this train of thought is purely informed by anxiety and rising cortisol, and that's why my thoughts are running away and I'm not thinking clearly. So I can recognize those things and manage negative thought patterns. And then the other thing that it's made me understand is particularly what informed that trigger point. And for me, it's social anxiety. So if I look at what happened, a lot of it was to do with realizing or just getting told in that week that basically you're just dealing with these tens of people every day, day in, day out in this professional space. And that really triggered me from a place where I wouldn't have been able to call myself a socially anxious person then. It's only through seeing a psychologist and actually with them working out that I actually experienced social anxiety, and I have my entire life, and it's informed so much of my life. And it also informed that it was a big part of why I felt stressed in that situation. So I guess now, having understood this, social anxiety is a thing that I can choose to manage more into the future.
Yeah, and find ways to manage it as opposed to maybe find ways to avoid it and not deal with it maybe.
Yeah, it's all about understanding what limitations it places on you and choosing whether you want to do anything about those limitations or not. So one example is, in the professional work world, you might have a job where networking, going to conferences and things is really important. If you're a socially anxious person, you can't do it. So that's a limitation, can be a limitation on your professional development. So you can look at that and be like, I'm fine. I can get through life being socially anxious and not doing that. But do I want to improve that area of my life? And if so, then let's have a look at social anxiety and try and, manage it, change elements of it if you want. So it's not saying that social anxiety or other forms of anxiety are necessarily bad, need to be fixed. It's more just understanding the experience and making a decision about, do you want to do anything about it?
I've spoken on this show many, many times about my own journey, I guess, to use a lack of a better word, about anxiety. I don't have social anxiety. I'm an extrovert. I'm one of those people that is fine talking to strangers, which is lucky because, I feel like we're friends, Mark, but I do talk to strangers quite regularly, even virtually. But I do have other forms of anxiety, and I find that when I've been at my worst, the way I deal with it has been to just avoid the situations where it's going to be coming up. And it sort of reminds me now what you're talking about with social anxiety. It's one thing to know that you're having it, but you're not dealing with it just because you're avoiding the situations where it might rise for you. And if I frame it in the ways of this podcast and talking about bikes and stuff, I have a real fear of going down steep hills. And it has led to me not taking on journeys and routes that I know I would absolutely love because I don't like the anxiety that goes along with them when my brain just goes, no, you can't do this anymore, and I squeeze the brakes on and I come to an absolute anxious mess, and like I have sometimes physically been shaking with my bike to not have to deal with that. And so my way of dealing with it is just not dealing with it and just I won't do those routes. So I hear what you're saying there about pushing yourself to understand it more and then not avoid the situation. Like, there is a benefit of knowing that what you're feeling in that moment is anxiety. It's calling it out and understanding that how you're responding is normal for that as well. I haven't found a solution to my anxieties yet. Baby steps for me. But it is refreshing to be able to actually talk candidly with somebody about it.
Yeah. And, it's perfectly natural and normal and effective to avoid situations that give you anxiety. Like, why not? But it's if you reach a point where you're like, actually, it's more important to me now to do this journey. It does have a downhill on it. So what do I need to do to get there?
I think personally, and again, listeners, I'm sharing my vulnerabilities here, and we're going to get into walking across Australia, and we're going to talk about remote landscapes and all of that stuff too, don't worry. But for me, I think there's an element where I still frame it for myself as a failure when anxiety hits me and when it has stopped me. And so I know that an easy way of dealing with the anxiety is, hey, if it's too much, who cares? Just walk down that spot. That's perfectly fine. And everyone I know doesn't mind that, hey, you're going to take this descent and you're going to be a lot slower than everyone else. And everyone I know doesn't care that I'm slower, but I feel like a failure. And that's where that's hurt me before. I haven't really overcome that part yet. Oh, God. Deep stuff today on the pod, people. But speaking out loud about them is beneficial to so many people as well. And I think there's a lot more people than we realise that this will resonate with. And maybe people who don't realise potentially this is what's happening to them as well. Is there an element, and you were talking about it's social anxiety that you had, and when you were talking about your experience there in the workplace, I feel like there's an element of feeling underprepared had put you into a spiral of anxiety, or a perception that you don't have the right level of experience or expertise or skills to deal with something. When you shift that focus from a workplace setting to an adventure setting and planning out something that's going to have you on the road for so many months, crossing a huge continent in the most remote landscapes, some of them the most remote landscapes in the world, in environments that are, 40 odd degrees day after day, sandy tracks of pushing a cart like that is almost impossible. Did you find that it pushed you to prepare a lot more to help you deal with stuff? There was an element at the start of the show, Mark, where we were talking about how you really yearned for adventure and the unknown, and there's an unknown in terms of this route for you, but was there also an element of preparing for the stuff you do know about to help give you the confidence to take it on?
I think that's where this blind spot that I mentioned comes in, because I don't think too hard about what it is actually going to be like. I didn't think too much about the heat. I didn't think too much about the distances and the remoteness. And I don't get anxiety from that. I don't get anxiety from those unknowns. I put my energy into, for the bike trip, it was making sure I've got a bike that I think is going to last, and I've got the right gear that seems to be, that'll get me through the journey. And similar thing with the walk, it was, all right, I need the cart. I need to make sure I can get food and water on the journey, have the idea of where I'm walking, the route, and then the rest is just have to take it as it comes. And I don't spend too much time actually thinking about it. And yeah, I don't get anxious from it at all. It's thrilling and I love it.
Wow. Do you think that's a learnt skill, or do you think that's just your default?
I think it's just a default, because it's just a default. I just have always wanted to explore and go on adventures. As soon as I finished uni, I went overseas for 2 years backpacking just by myself, just jumped on a plane, one-way ticket, and off I went. And looking back, it was like, wow, did I know I was ready, or did I feel ready? And I'm not sure. It was just, I just wanted to do it, had to do it. Didn't know where I was going to go and what it was going to be like. Just get that ticket and start. And same with these adventures. It's just, I have this yearning and I have this big picture idea, this visual, get myself in a position where I can get to day one and start it. And then off we go, discover what it's like, learn what it's like. Otherwise, you're just sitting there. Like I said, I don't like reading what other people are doing. I don't want to study what I'm about to do. If I've just got the right stuff to get me going, then the learning happens on the road.
Listeners, if you absolutely love this podcast and you love tuning into the stories that I bring to you each and every week, you can help me and support the show by heading to buymeacoffee.com/seek travel ride. Shout me a few virtual coffees and keep these podcasts rolling. Back to the episode. Yeah, I wonder, is there an element also where your prior experiences has informed you that you'll be able to get through?
Now, yes, I can say that, but at the start, not really. It's not being anxious, which means it's not and trying to think about what could happen and what might happen and how you might deal with it, because it's just being more relaxed about it and being like, well, I've got the right stuff to get going, and whatever that mindfulness or the living in the present, it's just whatever comes along, I'll deal with when it comes along. I don't need to stress about things that are yet to pass. The hot days are coming and I am enjoying being in a process of adapting. There's days where I'm like, I can't do this, it's too hot. But then meanwhile, I'm like, well, I can do little things every day to make it a bit easier to deal with the heat. And so therefore I'm learning to manage it and deal with it.
What are strategies of dealing with the heat? Because I feel it's not like you can, well, I'm imagining here because I've not been to the places you've been to, but I imagine it's not like you can just walk in the shady side of the road, for example. Like you're out in the open there with the heat all around you at times, right?
That's right. There is points where I'm like, I need to actually cool my body down. My body is overheating. I'll break into heat stress if I don't cool the body down. Look around and there is zero shade whatsoever, and you're in 40-something degree heat.
Can you lie underneath your cart? Like, is there shade from what you've got? Like, can you?
There is. The trouble that I found, and I'm still, as I move on from where I am now, I'll be adapting more. But yeah, the trouble is the shade just moves as the sun moves. So you can't just be like, I'm just going to lie here for the next 3 hours. It's like every 20, 15 minutes, you've got to kind of track along with whatever skerrick of shade you might have.
And then I guess when it's overhead, there is no shade because there's no shadow really.
Exactly. So I've started basically constructing shade that I can lie in if I don't find shade. Timing of when I walk. So I'm slowly just getting up earlier and earlier. So I'm starting in the coolest periods of the day.
Can you walk in the dark? Like, have you got headlights and stuff to be?
I could. I've got a basic head torch and that sort of thing, which I could easily. And I think on the full moon nights, I think I wouldn't even need a head torch to.
Oh my gosh, Mark, that would be magic. Oh, the stars in the sky must be mind blowing.
They are out here, absolutely. Yeah, big Milky Way.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I would just be mesmerised by that. The bush TV.
Absolutely, yeah. If you stay up long enough to enjoy it, as opposed to passing out from fatigue.
That's a cool feeling too, isn't it? Like, I imagine you come across as the sort of person that you're up for a physical challenge as part of an adventure as well. You're not taking the easy route. Even reflecting on your bike journey from Perth to Paris, there was no easy route there. Like, riding the whole length of WA through some of the most remote corrugated sections of road as well at times, right? Like, there was no easy route. And the same as you continued your journey on. Like, is the physical part of this challenge something that really drives you as well?
Yes, absolutely. I love that element that it is human powered, and obviously along with that comes intense physical challenges when you're trying to move yourself and stuff across a landscape, and an unforgiving landscape at times. And I relish it, and particularly with experience, I kind of relish it more and more because, when you get tested to your absolute limit, when you're so close to being broken, and then you get through whatever that experience is, you push out, you're nudging out the boundaries of what you're capable of every time you do that. So in hindsight now, I can recognize that has happened time after time during my bike trip. And so I kind of look forward, in a sense, to hitting my limit again. It's going to be further out than it ever was in the past. And it's an opportunity to push it out even further. So I had that moment just in recent weeks on my approach to Uluru towards the end of the Great Central Road in Northern Territory, where there was, 6 kilometres of deep sand, which my cart
oh my gosh
in the sand. And it was the first time on this walk so far that I was at my absolute limit. And in the moment, even though I was suffering because like just at the absolute end of my tether, at the same time, I can be there struggling, suffering, and being like, this is awesome, because this is my newest opportunity to push through it, get through this, even though you're just on the edge of being absolutely broken. And yeah, I get off on that. It's a thrill, and it's development, it's improvement, it's advancement in yourself and what you can do.
But you also talk about it and the stuff that you've dealt with so far. There's a level head about you as well. You were talking there about identifying that you're aware of when you need to cool your body down. You're aware that you need to adapt. So there is an element where you enjoy absolutely pushing the boundaries and pushing the limits and seeing what's possible. But you obviously still have the awareness of knowing, okay, I need to back it off here, or I need to self-adjust.
Yeah, especially in the sense of when I was talking about the heat and the body temperature, and that's because I have pushed it too hard over the level. In on my bike trip, I put myself in hospital in West Timor with dehydration, and then on a work trip as well. My work as a zoologist takes me to remote places in Western Australia and in the summer. And on a work trip, I didn't drink enough water and was doing too much intense work in full sun at the wrong time of year, and that sent me over the edge into full dehydration and heat stress, and had to get medical treatment. So I'm very aware of that risk, and I know that when my body is tipping over that edge.
Yeah, so you perhaps know the warning signs. I don't know the answer to this, but I wonder also if you've exposed yourself to heat stress before, are you more vulnerable to it again?
I Not that I'm aware of.
What you're talking there about relishing the tough moments and stuff, it's funny, I was on a group chat with some previous podcast guests, and it was Fergal Guian. Hi, Fergal, an awesome Irishman. And he was talking about the other end of the spectrum when we're talking about weather. He was in China in wintertime crossing the Taklamakan Desert, and he had extreme temperatures of like -20, and he says he can only picture China in his mind as being as cold as Siberia. That's what he pictures China. He can't picture it in summer. And he has said, like, with the benefit of getting through something, in the moment he hated that experience in a certain time, but he would give anything to be back there right now. And I wonder if it's the same thing. I sort of joked that I think there's like this thing with adventurers that there's obviously an element of our personalities where we crave the hard stuff and the type 2 stuff, and in the rose-tinted glasses stuff as well. Does that match up with you? Can you sort of really associate yourself with something like that as well?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put myself back in a difficult situation. Like if you were to tell me, I'll give you, there'd be a limit, but I'll give you $10,000 to go back and do that section again. I'd be like, nah, it was hard. It was too hard. It was awful. Like I don't want to go back there. But I look forward to any next time where I'm in such a difficult situation, fresh, new experience. Yeah.
There'd have to be a level of pride of being able to look back and thinking of the stuff you've gone through. I want to talk about the cart that you're pulling along, because when you're talking about you've got all the food for such long stretches and all the equipment that you need for that, and then you've got stretches where you've had to have 100 litres, so 100 kilos, 100 litres of water on a cart. What's the heaviest the cart has got to?
I reckon around 170 kilograms.
170 kilos. Oh my gosh, I'm literally doing I'm doing the mind blown emoji here, Mark. How do you prepare yourself for that? Like, on your bike trip, there was an element where you did the practice loop. And I know people that I've spoken to who like physically get themselves ready, but I would have probably more people than less who don't get themselves physically ready because you get physically ready as you go. What about for this walk? Like, when you're pushing a cart that you know is going to be that heavy, how do you get yourself ready for that? Like, is there an element of, did you get yourself physically ready for it? Did you take the mantra of, I'll just figure it out as I go? Is the way that the cart's engineered mean that it doesn't feel like you're not feeling the burden of 170 kilos?
It was the same thing happened as what happened with my bike trip, where I was like, oh, I'll do some training. I'll make sure I'm fit and ready. And then life is just busy and you don't do any training. And it was a similar thing for this. And particularly with the cart, I only received the built cart. I designed it and then had it fabricated. And I only received it in the couple of weeks before I started. I only really loaded it up in the way that I expected I'd load it up on the walk like 2 days before I started. I basically didn't know what it felt like pulling my gear until the first day that I did it out.
Proper unknown. You really relish the unknown.
So it was very much learning as I go, and you can get that kind of sense in some of my videos, because the start point where I started with the cart, which was after 5 days of walking just with a pack to get through kind of sand dune, really sandy country. And then when I started with the cart, I looked like a mess in the videos because I was like, I didn't know how to balance it. I didn't know, I was, going through the learning process of how to load it up and everything. So I struggled more than I had to at the start. And then meanwhile, I was on hills and sand dunes as well. So kind of jumping in the deep end there. But touching on the other part of your question about, preparing the cart and balancing it, for example, even though there's 170 kilograms there, that's not weight that is putting pressure directly onto my body because of the way that I can balance it. So I can balance it so that there's no downward pressure where it's attached to my body.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, I tell people it's, if you think about a car in neutral on flat ground, anyone can really give a car a nudge and get it rolling, even though it's such a heavy thing. It doesn't take a lot of effort to get a car that's in neutral rolling on flat ground. And similar thing with this cart, it's well balanced. So the only thing I need to do is get it rolling. And then the challenges are gravity on hills and then the sand, because the wheels just bite into deep, soft sand.
You've got a brake as well, don't you, on the cart? Like, is there a brake? Because I was thinking getting going might be one thing with a neutral car, but you've also got to be able to get it to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. This thing can become a runaway train on downhills.
Whoa.
So that's why I've got the brakes. And I didn't think I'd actually need to use them until I reached Eastern Australia when I crossed the Great Dividing Range. But I have used it, and it's a good feature because, I can slow this down and park it and kind of lock the brakes on as well, which is good.
So with the sand, I know, say, for example, if someone's going four-wheel driving on a sandy road or bike riding or fat biking or something like that, like letting a lot of air out of the tyres is obviously what you need to do. Is that something like with the cart as well? Like, does it have wheels that you let air out of the tyres? I feel like a real dummy here asking this question, Mark, but I do not know what a walking cart is like to manage. And, like, how are you managing a deep sandy track?
It's a good question because my wheels are solid wheels, so solid foam. There's no air in them. And I've
Wow.
prioritized that because I didn't want to deal with punctures at all. But then that presented a limitation in that I knew the fatter the tyres would be, the better, because it'd be easier to get through sand. But I did not find suitable fat, solid tyres. The tyres that I went with are narrow, I think 1.75 inch. And that's partly informed why I paired the tyres. So anyone looking at the cart will see that there's kind of two pairs of tyres side by side. And so that helps spread the load out and offers a bit of kind of redundancy. If one tyre, one wheel on one side stuffed up, I've got kind of a backup there. I'm not completely stuck. But basically, because the tyres are narrow, because I can't deflate the tyres and increase the surface area digging through the sand, I struggle in deep sand. It just bites in. And again, I've just learned what the specific limits are along the way. So at one point in my journey, I decided to take what I was calling a shortcut off sort of main roads, which are dirt tracks, but onto these small station tracks, because I could see from aerial imagery there was this track and it was going to be a shorter distance. So I went down it, and then just slowly, there'd be like a tiny patch of soft sand that I'd be like, ooh, I don't want to see too much of that. And then I kept going, and it's like, oh, there's another one, but it's only short. And then the patches of sand kind of got slowly like bigger and bigger. And then I reached a point where there was just deep soft sand for as far as I could see. And I was like, oh no. And I thought, I looked at how much food and water I had. I looked at the aerial imagery to judge the soil types to predict when the sand will end. And I thought, initially, 4 days of hell I think I'm going to have if I just push on and drag through.
Sorry, whoa. I thought you were going to say 4 kilometres of hell. 4 days?
Yeah, I thought,
whoa.
And initially I made the decision to go for it. And then I quickly stopped, and I was like, actually, nah, this is stupid, because I didn't know. I was predicting, I was making these,
it was that full unknown, wasn't it?
It was going to be safer with the amount of food and water that I had to backtrack. And so I backtracked, and that was 2 days of effort essentially lost. And then, so for the most part, instances like that, I can avoid deep sand, but then I will encounter points where I can't necessarily avoid it. So that section, as I've talked about, into Northern Territory on the Great Central Road, there is no way around it except to just haul the cart. And it was over 40 degrees, and it was just, literally hauling it centimetre by centimetre, just jerking it through the deep sand, inching forward. And that was where I was just overheating. And the thing was, I knew there was bitumen. I was about to hit bitumen after like 1,000 kilometres.
Oh gosh, sorry. This is again. I thought you were going to say like 10 kilometres.
No, like there was along the Great Central Road, there's little patches of bitumen around where there's like turnoffs and the roadhouses, but for the most part, it's just this big long dirt road.
Yeah.
And I was about to hit the bitumen that runs into Uluru, and so that was just dangling in front of me as the reward. So yeah, I just pushed on and was overheating and would go and sit in the shade, cool down a little bit, attack it again for another, short section till I started overheating, and then yeah, just inching my way forward.
So progress, like what does a general day's worth of progress look like? On the law of averages, what sort of distance are you looking at making each day?
30 kilometres.
Yeah, that's a long hike without hauling through remote areas as well. I know it's achievable, but it's still a long hike day after day.
Yeah, it's interesting because my perspective has changed. Like at the start, I gave myself just enough food for the first 5 days with the cart just to cover 17 kilometres on average.
I remember, was there something where who knows? There's probably a few videos where you've talked about like you'd estimated that you're a bit behind schedule, but you're hoping as you go into it you'll get a bit further ahead. And I don't know, even at that stage, was it like 20 or 25 kilometres might have even been what you were aiming for. And so it's obviously pushing out as you're getting more experience there. Oh, this is going to sound silly, but I'm just up for asking silly questions. The asphalt must feel so different to when you're on the dirt. Is smoother dirt better on your feet than hard asphalt? And what I mean by that is, like, if you're on a non-corrugated dirt road, does that even exist in the outback? I'm not sure, but would that be better for you from a absorption point of view than a hardened surface?
I think so, yes. And then it's hard to separate that from, other factors like it feels more adventurous being on a dirt road. It means there's less traffic to deal with.
What has the traffic been like to deal with?
Oh, just in some patches where I am trapped into walking along a bitumen road, and you just get the holiday traffic, camper vans and things, and trucks as well, if you're on some of the major arterial routes. So I haven't been able to avoid every, highway. There's little sections that I've had to do, and for the most part, it's been fine because I apply what I've learned from the bike trip, which was you don't let anyone else make any decisions about your safety on the road. I just move to whatever side of the road that a passing car is not on. If there's two cars that are about to cross around me, I just get off the road. If there's a truck, I just get off the road. So it's just about, managing the risk yourself.
The rules of the law aren't there as a big shield and a barrier if something goes wrong. I think that's a smart move. I recently interviewed Heinz Strucker, and he was someone who famously made his bike look very unique to get people's curiosity up so that they would approach him. That was what he did on purpose, right? I can't think of any more curious sight for a grey nomad pulling a caravan through Australia than someone hiking their way across with a big cart. Is like nearly every van stopping? Like, are you finding your progress sometimes is slowed down by all these lovely interactions?
It is in a good way because it gives me forced little breaks, and often those breaks come with treats like a cold drink or a piece of fruit.
Mango, yeah.
It's also interesting how it changes along the way. So the Great Central Road, for example, when I started that at the Laverton end in Western Australia, I think about half the cars would stop and ask if I'm all right. And then the further I went, the fewer cars stopped. So I think it got to the point that about maybe 1 in 10 would stop, and the rest would blast past. Some would slow down and have a look and just keep going.
I'm stunned and amazed. I'm looking like a stunned mullet. Like, really? Like,
yeah.
Oh gosh, I would stop. No questions asked. I would stop for another bike rider, obviously, as well. But wow, I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just that they're used to the remoteness and it's not a thing for them?
I don't know. Like,
do they not see you? Surely they can't not see you.
Part of me is like, the more remote I go, the more crazy I must be in other people's eyes. So like maybe people are like, oh, this is a weird
who's that freak?
Crazy guy. Yeah. I'm not going to be not going to stop in the middle of nowhere for him. Because then on the approach to Uluru, it picked up again, with tourist traffic and things. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. It's funny, I've just recently watched the Netflix documentary series on the missing person from the little outback town of Larimer. And it really struck me that the characters that were living in that town. And I've sort of thought about the characters that you might be coming up across as well. And Yeah, that's sorry. It's just blowing my mind that there would be people that I can understand them not stopping, but is everyone at least waving or slowing down or?
Oh, you get some that just have their phone out filming you as they go past with no other acknowledgement. Yeah, some wave.
What?
Yeah, some wave. A lot just fly past, can leave you in dust. Yeah,
That's what it makes me a little bit sad, Mark. Oh yeah, I don't know. It's their missed opportunity. Actually, speaking of people slowing down and stopping, was it not too long ago you actually had the awesome experience of having a bike traveller coming from the other direction coming towards you?
yeah. His name was Paul, and he was doing an Audax mission. I think he started in Cairns and was riding to the southwest of Australia to Fremantle, doing the Great Central Road, which goes roughly from mid Queensland to mid Western Australia across the Northern Territory. And yeah, it was. I heard about him on the road because holiday traffic coming in my direction that had passed him told me that there's this guy on the bike coming, and I was excited because yeah, to chat to another person that's out there doing a human powered adventure and to connect on the about cycle touring is really looking forward to it. And yeah, we crossed paths one afternoon on the road and had a really good chat.
What are the questions that you're asking someone like that? Because when you were bike traveling, and I'm sure, especially now when you're walking, you're going to get all the typical, where are you going? Where are you from? Why are you doing this? But what do you ask someone?
Some of the practical things like how far are you riding every day? How much water are you going through? And then it's simple things like what wildlife have you seen and what experiences, and then then you get on to and how are you enjoying it? Like, how are you coping? Like, are you doing all right out here?
Yeah, because I'm sure you lift their spirits too. Like, that must have been an awesome experience with Paul, just seeing him out there on the road. And I remember actually when you spoke about it on your socials, you said you'd heard that there was a potential, and then you sort of saw this dot on the landscape that you thought that could be, and then it sort of was. That would have been awesome. That would be a mood lifting moment.
Yeah, it was because what I saw, it could have been an emu, this kind of vague shape, and then it just kept coming and coming, and I was like, no, that's the bicycle, and yep, then slowly rolling towards me.
Well, you know what? I can't take the opportunity there with a zoologist and not talk about Australian wildlife. Aussies are always greatly known for talking about all the things that are really wild and deadly, but I don't want to go down that path. I want to just talk about what are you typically seeing wildlife perspective?
It's very, very little, surprisingly little.
Wow.
I'm absolutely shocked at what's going on because I've seen one live snake the entire walk.
Wow, what sort was it?
It was a ringed brown snake. And I've seen a couple of dead reptiles, like monitors.
Yep.
I have not seen a dog or a dingo.
Wow.
I've seen camels, and then crossing into Northern Territory, there's a patch where there's a bunch of wild horses, and then there's birds, of course, but you catch their activity, early in the morning or in the afternoon, in the evenings with the heat. But I've not seen any mammals or like native mammals. Yeah, it's been shocking how little I've actually seen.
And I mean, you're obviously surprised by that because, again, I don't want to keep comparing what you're doing now with the walk with when you did the ride. But when you did the ride, you were also in some super remote sections of Australia in a very similar type of environment for long periods of time. Like, did you see more wildlife? Do you feel day to day there?
In Australia, I think I did. I can say, yeah, I definitely saw more riding, and I think partly it's just to do with what you're doing and when. So I'm walking during the day. Animals are nocturnal.
It's too hot for them to be out.
Yeah, I'm not going. I've just been working or sleeping, the night. I'm not going looking for them during the night. And then I'm also crossing through some of the most arid areas of Australia, deserts, the Great Victoria Desert and the Gibson Desert. Yeah, again, the animals are hiding away from the heat. Well, they're out there, but yeah, they're only active at certain times of the day, and I'm not necessarily out and about covering distance. I'm usually just at my campsite, pottering around at those times.
Something that strikes me, Mark, with this type of human-powered travel is bike travel slow, walking is even slower. Have you enjoyed that aspect of this type of adventure, the fact that it's even slowed things down even more?
I guess I haven't thought about it a lot. I've just gotten used to how long it takes to get anywhere on the walking trip.
Mm.
And I've only really thought about it when I've chatted to Paul, the cyclist, and here in Uluru, I've bumped into a French cycle tourist and chatting to them.
Bonjour, whoever you are.
It's like, oh wow, yeah, that's right. That is how fast you can move on a bicycle. In the same way that I talk to people like in the caravans, and they're like, oh yeah, we left Perth 2 days ago, and I'm like, huh? And it's like, oh god, that is how quickly you can move across landscapes. So I haven't really compared or thought about it. I've gotten used to what it's like for me. Here's this distance, and here's the number of days it's going to take me to get to the next place. But it is, yeah, comparatively incredibly slow.
Is there an element where you go into it probably with a mindset of realising what distance you're going to be doing, right? And you were saying at the start, 17 Ks was, a huge day. Now you're looking at 30. And mentally, you're obviously preparing yourself for that. Is there an element where you ever find, like, do you get frustrated by that at times? And how has it been emotionally on this trip from that perspective? Like, I often think sometimes these isolated journeys, they can put you on cloud nine and something could happen that could drop you right off. And there can be a roller coaster element to it. Have you found that on this journey?
Not really. There was a time on the Great Central Road where I was like, this would be so much better on a bicycle because I can move across this landscape a little bit faster because, the landscape's not really changing. You're trudging through the heat. It is incredibly slow. So at that time, I was like, oh, for a momentarily, I thought, oh, maybe I should have done this whole thing on a bicycle. And it actually occurred.
You've got a bike that could do it too.
Yeah, exactly. But then I was also like, wow, like it actually didn't occur to me to do it even after I decided, to go for a long walk and plan this adventure. At no point was I like, oh, should I do it on a bicycle instead? It was always the walking.
I don't want to zoom you to the finish line. There's a hell of a lot of this walk to go, and being mindful and present and in the moment is definitely part of this adventure as well. Do you think there's an element where you'd like to do it on a bike? And I guess actually, because I'm good at layering on two-tiered questions, I'm going to cheekily layer another one. Are you the sort of person that would return to somewhere you've been to do something again?
It's hard to answer the question about whether I'd do this on a bicycle just because I'm in this walking world at the moment. I really liked walking. I'm really liking walking this route, but I think it's just stuck in my head, this walking plan. So if I look at what I'm doing and think, oh, should I do it on a bicycle? It's like, well, no, because I've planned this. I've looked forward to it. It's just such a huge part of me, the walking aspect of it. So it'd be hard to say swap that out for something else just because this adventure is so ingrained in me now. And then what was the other part of the question?
Would you revisit stuff that you've done before? And whether that's on a bike or with, hiking shoes on or something, like, are you the sort of person that goes back for the same experience or, the same area?
Yeah. In terms of revisiting places that I've already been, I would absolutely love to revisit, even if it's doing the same activity. You can do it at different times of the year and it'll be completely different. You could do it with someone else or with different people and have an absolutely amazing time. I think it's just that very simple thing of if I had the time and money to do something, I would be doing something new as opposed to choosing to go back and doing the same thing in the same place.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I can totally understand that. There's an element, and it wasn't until someone had vocalised it to me, when I've done something personally that I've really loved, I've always thought in the moment, oh, yeah, I'd do that again. But there's also an element where revisiting it changes your memories of it. Like, when something is so good, I don't need to change that memory. I don't need to experience it again. That can be the great thing that I did there, and I'll try and seek something else there. Because what if I go back and it's not the same? Yeah. And then does that mean that I'm disappointed?
Yeah. I mean, on this subject as well, there was a part of me that I'd kind of wanted to ride through Africa for a long time. And as I said, there was a point where I almost left to do it. And then I also find myself feeling a little bit more attracted to other types of adventures at the same time rather than just getting back to Africa on the bicycle. And I think part of that is, I've done a massive bicycle journey. There are other types of journeys to do. So I'm sure I will get back to Africa and the bicycle would be I think the perfect way to explore Africa. But, who knows, I might be just more attracted to other styles of adventure. So another one I'd love to do is long distance kayaking.
I was thinking I'm going to see you rowing an ocean or sailing across the seas or something soon. Human powered is the key linkage here, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
I'm putting my hand up. Get in early. I'm so interviewing you when you were doing that. Who knows where you're doing it from? And I feel like you're guaranteed to see wildlife there on a daily basis, right? Marine wildlife, I feel maybe is more present. I guess it depends where you go.
Yeah, I'd love to do an ocean rowing trip. In terms of kayaking, what I'd love to do is essentially cross the North American continent, because you can connect up. There's a few rivers that you can essentially connect up, like the Mississippi, I think Des Moines River, you've got the Yukon River, and there's bits that you would sort of hike between to get from the bottom of one to the headwaters of another, and just, wheel the kayak. But you can essentially get from the northwest down to Mexico via some of the major river systems. So that would be incredible.
Recently, I've personally been thinking about the idea of pack rafting and like combining that with bike packing and pack rafting, because I've sort of seen it. And I remember years ago when I first saw that on the scene, I like dismissed it out of hand and go, what a faff. What a pain in the butt that would be. You get somewhere, you got to pack your bike down, pack all your gear, and you paddle a few kilometres and you get going. And now, I don't know, I'm seeing it with a new vision. I'm like, how cool would it be to like actually explore the water and explore the river and get to the other side in a different way and maybe access something I couldn't. Maybe this is how these thoughts start with.
Yeah, and then
you got to feed the adventure, right?
The latest thing there that I've been inspired by is watching on Instagram this guy that paraglides, basically travels and explores by paragliding. So you see him traversing the mountains in Nepal and India, northwest.
Oh my goodness.
Simply by landing on the top of a mountain, setting up camp for the night. Then the next day he just launches off and can spend hours in the air throughout the day.
Can you imagine the stories he'd tell?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I need to find, who is this person? How do I find you?
Yeah. And
hook me up.
And then, yeah, just goes gliding all day above these most beautiful mountain ranges in the world, and then gets tired and looks for a campsite down on one of the mountains and glides down and camps the night. Yeah.
While we're talking about beautiful places in the world, it strikes me, even though I physically have not been here, I feel the outback is probably one of the most beautiful places in Australia as well. It's or a very unique part of Australia. What's it been like living in that landscape?
Amazing, and particularly where I am now in kind of red sand country and sand dune country. It's, I don't know, yeah, just feel very much at home. It's just, it's such an arid, such a testing environment for life, but it is one of the most beautiful environments in the world, this red sand spinifex country, across the Pilbara and into where I am now. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's amazing, to be here again.
Yeah, and I imagine it's such an uplifting environment to be surrounded in. And when you were talking about how you almost feed off the adventure, the unknown, pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits, day in, day out, like doing what you're doing, surviving in an environment that's, meant to be too harsh for us to really be able to survive in, that's got to be an uplifting feeling as well.
It is, but then also feel separated from it, because I'm packing all my water and I'm packing all my food. I'm carrying what I need into it. How incredible would it be to exist within the landscape and using it for your sustenance? Yeah, it's lovely to be a part of it passing through, but again, I'm not, to be able to live off the land would be absolutely amazing.
Does your route take you through any areas and First Nations areas where you'll have the opportunity to learn a bit more about that? Like, are you going through areas where you need to look to get permits from First Nations to cross lands, and does that give you the opportunity to learn about their communities? Because there are definitely First Nations people in Australia who are surviving and living off the land in places like that as well.
I haven't encountered opportunities so far. Yes, I've got the permits to travel along the Great Central Road across areas owned and managed by the traditional owners. Access to the communities is a difficult thing. You can't just access the communities willy-nilly, and I haven't found reason enough that's convincing enough for the managers to allow me to enter communities and have that opportunity to learn from traditional owners in those environments. And so, the only opportunity that I've seen is the tourism ones here at Uluru where you can go to a talk and about bush food and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and learn that different way. What about other elements of First Nations culture? Like, this is really starkly showing that I don't know, and I've not been in the area you've been in, but have you seen like historical stuff on? Is there stuff on your route from that perspective as well? I know on your original, big bike adventure and stuff, I remember watching in your films, you might have been near a rock cave that had, First Nations rock art and stuff. The same on this at all?
I've passed through like nama holes, which are sort of holes in rock that hold water, and they're just marked on a map. And so they've been utilised, obviously, for many, many years by the Aboriginal people for permanent water in these arid areas. I've seen now, having gone to Uluru, just with the access, or I guess knowledge that it's there and the access through the tourism world. I've seen some of the rock art and just here at Uluru, the opportunity to learn about the culture of the place has been amazing.
Yeah, and give a sense of a different history to the area that we're in as well. I don't know what it's like now, and I say this a little bit. I know I'm older than a lot of people that tune into the show, but I'm actually not that old, and we didn't really learn about it growing up at school. Like, we didn't, and I hope that that's something that is changing, to be able to appreciate that rich history that goes with our country as well. I think is something, it's enriching.
Absolutely, yeah, and to travel like this, it's a great way to start to begin to learn about Aboriginal culture in Australia. You can look at a map and study what language and culture groups you're passing through. There are so many across Australia. It's like passing through many little nations and meeting Aboriginals from different areas, and they're proud of their area and their culture, their traditions in those areas. And yeah, it is a way to begin to learn about these things. In terms of opportunities to deep dive, it is difficult just because you don't have access to the communities. You're just passing through these roadhouses along the way.
Something I want to ask is, like, when you didn't have expectations or perceptions and that was a good blind spot for you, what is it like, though, when you are met with a reality? And we spoke about, like walking towards Uluru, seeing it in the distance for a whole day, getting bigger and bigger as you walk slowly to it, and then the reality of seeing it. Like, that's a mind-blowing scene. What has it been in reality for you day to day? Are you finding yourself in states of awe, like that feeling of awe and mindful about where you're going through? Or is it, there's elements where scenes like that are just, wow. Uluru is a big milestone, I imagine. And I imagine, the state borderline would have been a milestone, and getting through 10 kilometres of sand would be a milestone. Hitting the asphalt road's a milestone. What about the unknown milestones or the unknown moments of awe along the way? What have that been like to experience?
Yeah, like ones I wasn't expecting or thinking about.
Yeah.
I guess the unknown moments have probably been associated with transitions in the landscapes, and you're moving so slowly that you see changes, the subtle changes in the landscape, and when there is a change as well, it's just new and exciting. Even though in simple terms it's not much is going on, there might be some more scrub than there has been for the last several hundred kilometres, or as soon as something's different than it was for the previous however many days of walking, it just becomes thrilling and new.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. Like, if difference in scenery, there's also an element when you see something different, like you were saying there, Mark, where it gives you a sense of perspective that you've moved through as well. Like, that you're making progress across such a big nation.
Yeah.
In terms of progress, like Uluru, often people think it's like the centre of Australia. I think it's sort of a little bit more to the west than the centre, potentially. Maybe I've got that wrong. Where are you in this, maybe nearly 6,000 kilometre journey? Like, how far into the centre are you nearly at, perhaps?
I've walked 2,520 kilometres.
Wow.
And you're right in saying that Uluru is slightly west of centre. So I'm going to hit up the centre in the next 2.5 weeks.
Wow. That's a huge milestone. And are you sort of like, do you have little like mini milestone markers in your mind?
I kind of do, because in my mind, I've kind of broken the trip up into 4 sections. There was the first section, which got me to Laverton, which was the start of the Great Central Road. Then there was Laverton to Uluru. which being here is probably, it might be the biggest milestone highlight of the journey.
Mm.
And then the next section is getting to a place called Inaminka. And so this is where it's leaving here, leaving Uluru and getting to Inaminka that I think I'm going to be challenged the most because of remoteness and because of the heat. So there's the longer stretches that I'll be facing along this route. So getting to Inaminka, even though Inaminka itself, actually I've heard there's great food at the hotel, but
Oh, I hope they've got a nice. You want a big fruit bowl, right?
yeah, salad or fruit bowl. I mean, that'll be nice, but in itself, Inaminka isn't necessarily a highlight. It's just
A place.
then marks the start of the last run for me, which is across southern Queensland to the end point, where I'll slowly be kind of re-entering. It'll feel like re-entering civilization, I think, at that point. Just going through country from desert into land use for agriculture, then into urban areas.
Yeah, and you were mentioning the Great Dividing Range as well, like going from a flatter desert to rolling countryside to, proper mountains potentially as well, right? Where you're finishing off there in Cape Byron, like it's pretty hilly countryside to the west of that.
Yeah, and I haven't thought about it too much because I know that, I've gotten more fit as I've walked. So my readiness and ability to tackle that will be different when I reach it than it is now.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten too worried about the fact that I'll be doing major hills in that area.
No, you don't need to be worried. You just remain excited.
Yeah.
If it's anything I've learnt from speaking with you, Mark, and from speaking with the hundreds of people I've interviewed, it is that learning by doing is sometimes the best way to do it, and you gain confidence through the actions of doing as well. Like I remember when I first spoke to you, and I think I was talking about when you were in Timor-Leste, and I think it was on the first day you were there. It was ridiculously hot. It was ridiculously humid. Your bike broke. You were in like the most mountainous country ever, and you had to deal with a tough situation, and you did. Remember? So like those little things you've always gotten through. There is always a way, and I feel that that'll be the way for the rest of it. There are going to be people listening to this show who 100% want to follow your journey along. What's the best way of them to do so?
It's to look up Trek for Youth Mental Health. So that's TREK, number 4, Youth Mental Health. And I publish videos to tell the story on Instagram, which feeds into Facebook. And I've got a website that tracks my route as well. I record tracks on Strava and plot my route so that those people that love those kind of details can access that information.
Yeah, and FYI, people, I've been following you since, I guess before I interviewed you a few years ago. But I've absolutely loved seeing your videos pop up on my feed and finding out where you are. And I was chatting to Mark before I pressed record, listeners, saying the amount of times before this interview that I zoomed in and zoomed out of Australia thinking, wow, where you've made your way to. It's been awesome. So listen, I will make it easy for you. I've got links in the show notes directly to that. And I'm also going to provide a link to Mark's fundraiser there as well. Mark, you're doing an awesome thing and you're championing an awesome cause. And as I said at the start of the show, hearing you speak so candidly and openly about your own personal journey encourages others to be comfortable to do the same and to also hopefully go the next step of being in the same position that you are in now, where you realise that there was something from that mental health side that you needed to understand more and learn to build strategies around. And I feel like the growth that you've gone on from doing that is exponential, and it's coming in spades now.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah.
I've always got something to say. This show's run so long already, and I need to wrap it up, which makes me very sad. I've got 3 quick questions that I'm going to fire your way, Mark Gresser. The first one's music related. You're a guest of the show, twice guest now. You had to pick a song for the music playlist of Seek Travel Right. What is the song that you would choose to be the soundtrack to your current adventure?
I think I'm going to have to be disappointing and come back to you because the interesting thing is I'm not listening to music or anything at all as I'm walking. So it's not even like a go.
You're stripping it right back.
Yeah, there's not even a go-to that's been a part of this walk. So
wow, there's not an earworm that's been in your head or anything like that.
No,
wow.
No. Oh, well.
Oh, here we go.
So the one that does come to mind is Solid Rock by Goanna. And obviously because I'm at the Rock right now in Uluru, but also because on Saturday I watched Solid Rock, or the singer-songwriter, play Solid Rock at Uluru itself.
Oh, what an experience.
That was because Saturday was the 40th anniversary of the handback of Uluru and the area. So the Prime Minister came in, the Governor-General, and there was a great celebration at the Rock, and it included Solid Rock.
There we go. Well, I've got you down. I think it's fitting. Like you said, it was such a big milestone, maybe the biggest one, and the feeling that you had when you first spotted eyes on it and the feeling that you had being there, I think it's right that we put it down. So that's cool. The next question, my gosh, it's bike related, but maybe it could also be equally walking related too. You're given the choice one day. You can head left, and that means you're going to be pushing into, I'm going to make it walking related, you're going to be pushing into the most sandiest road in the world. Or you can go right, and you're going to be riding in the dirtiest headwind ever. Which one are you going to choose?
Oh, that's a really great question. Oh, I'd ride into a headwind, yeah. It's actually relatively easily, because dragging this cart through sand is absolute hell and much harder to manage mentally than riding into a headwind, I believe.
Oh, all right. And my last question, I normally ask you to finish a sentence bike related, but I'm going to leave the word bike out, and I'm just going to say the best thing about taking an adventure is?
The best thing about taking an adventure, I think the best thing about taking an adventure is discovery. You are just learning so much about yourself, about the world, about existence, about the planet, and that unknown factor. You don't know what's coming along, but you're just out there discovering it for the first time is motivating, thrilling, exciting.
And I think a lot of that goes to the crux of what makes you thrive inside to seek out these adventures as well. I really feel adventure is part of your DNA, Mark, and I sort of knew it before coming into this session. I knew it before the first session, and if anything, speaking with you now has really solidified it. And you've got a hell of a lot to discover laying ahead of you. Oh my gosh, Mark Gresser, it has been an absolute dead set pleasure to be able to speak with you yet again, hear what it's been like for you pushing that cart on the road. The amount of times my mind was blown when you were telling me about situations that I thought would be over in a few kilometres, but it was like 1,000 kilometres away. And I'm sort of really interested to see how the rest of the journey is going to unfold for you as well, and what you're going to continue to share. You're an absolute legend. You're doing what gives you joy, and you're doing what you say you're going to do, which I think is also something to be super proud of. Thank you so much for sharing your story and experiences here on the show, on the podcast for Seek Travel Ride.
No worries at all, Bella. Absolutely anytime. I hope I have some more adventures in the future to share with you.
Hell yes. Hey, you know what? Let's put it out here now. Totally interviewing you when you get to Cape Byron. Done. There we go, listeners. That is my chat all wrapped up there with the awesome Mark Gresser. How did you find that? This is the first time I've sort of really featured someone's adventure that's not 100% bike related, but I think the themes of it are really all stuff that all of us who do take bike travel adventures can relate to. What I really enjoyed listening to there with Mark was his motivations, that he's seeking out the unknown, and it's that curiosity that makes something like hauling a cart from the western point of Australia all the way to the most eastern point of Australia something that gets him really excited. I've always thought that adventure lies in the unknown, and clearly that is something that Mark can agree with. I really appreciated him also sharing his mental health journey and being very open about that as well. He's doing a fantastic job at the moment with his fundraiser, and as I mentioned during the episode, I have provided links in the show notes for you to be able to follow Mark's journey along, and if so inclined, also contribute to his fundraiser as well. And if you have enjoyed Seek Travel Ride and you enjoy listening to this podcast, make sure that you subscribe to our Seek Travel Ride newsletter. I send the newsletter out periodically a few times a month, and it lets you know more about the guests that I have interviewed, a sneak peek at who is coming up on the show, and more news about this bike adventure community as well. You can find links to joining up to the Seek Travel Ride newsletter in the show notes. And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.